Hello and welcome to All Elite Morro. Oosh, we're the best. Talk wrestling. Still pops me every single time. How's everybody doing? Trying to get all the screens set up in the right places, and it's not happening for me. This happens every Monday night because I am my own producer. I am my own host. I'm a do-it-all. I'm a one-man army. I'm a one-man gang. And I forgot to set up the lighting now that I see it. Hello, Mr. David Ayres. Hello, Mr. Shane. Shane sucks eggs. One sec. Watch this. We're doing it live, folks. Doing it live. We're setting everything up live. This is the nightmare. I always forget something. How steady are you? How's that look? Is that better? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I got loads of beard stuff the other day. Look at the neat PowerPoint. If only it worked properly. As Nash and Hall would say, this is JoJo. You, Shane. Yeah, I think the chat has caught up with me, so we're good to go. Rock and roll. Monday night, big week in wrestling. I thought last week was an excellent week of professional wrestling all around. What up, Nick? How you doing, bud? Coming in from the Insta earlier on, where Shane, little bitch boy Shane, does all the work. Mark, this question drove me mental. It's a great question. Who do you think will be the next WWE champion after this woeful Cody reign? And honestly, I can't think of like an exciting answer. What's an exciting answer after Cody? Because it feels like if we're to be logical about it, it feels like the likes of Braun and a lot of the younger guns, the more kind of inspired choices, are lining up for Punk's title. And over on the SmackDown side, with Cody, it doesn't feel like they've developed a logical next guy up. And I see Nick there says Breaker or Zayn. But I feel like Breaker or Zayn would be perfect. Look, I'd love to see Sammy get a proper run with a world title. And obviously, I think Braun Breaker should be world champion very, very soon. But I just think they're both kind of lined up for the Punk side of things rather than the Cody side of things. That's what I found so interesting about this question, is that any like inspiring or exciting or fresh world champion felt like they're on the Punk side of things, and nobody feels like they're on the Cody side of things. Are we breaking off into another Codyverse a la his latter days in AEW, or from actually most of his AEW run? It feels like they're even short of decent challengers for him. Aaron Reynolds says good chance him and Randy trade the belts at some stage. Could see that. What I could see there really, as much as anything, is short run for Randy and then back onto Cody, but like not Randy as the next heavyweight champion. They should have put it on Drew at SNME to change things up. That is Ronan. Disagree. Think Drew is too cold, and that might have heated him up, but I just don't think he's doing interesting work at the moment. I think he needs to find himself a little more. I think putting the title on him in that character would be, his current character would be rewarding what's currently mediocrity. But Ronan, I do agree with your next one. In a perfect world, a returning Kevin Owens. That's the answer. That's the only thing I could think of that would get me excited. And if you think about it, he went out in February last year. They're talking about like a 10, 11, 12 month injury. He could be back in time for the Royal Rumble. Wouldn't that be fucking lovely? Zayn is getting a manufactured version of the Daniel Bryan push, Nick says. Yeah, and the funny thing about that, Nick, is it's manufactured now, but they had organically got there a couple of years ago, and they didn't give him the Daniel Bryan push when it was organic. There seems to be a vortex of Cody at the minute. This is Ushin, where he's stone cold, and everyone who goes to work with him in turn turns cold for the duration of their feud. I do agree with that, but I also think that Drew is cold coming into the feud. I think Drew is just caught in the same loop of a character he was in last year, and it's happening to diminishing returns now. So yeah, I just think it's a weird space. And look, the fact that SmackDown is dog shit at the moment doesn't help Cody or anybody else feel like they have a bit of heat or buzz behind them. Colin says whoever can cut a promo for 3 hours should be the next champ. That's the other side of things. They announced that SmackDown's going back to 3 hours in January. Like, they're struggling to fill a 2-hour show. They're not even filling a 2-hour show with interesting content. There's some good stuff here and there, but in general, SmackDown is just not good at the minute. And Aaron then says, and here's another one, Jacob's an interesting option upon his return. Jacob would be a fantastic option. They need to get Jacob out of the MTG black hole, and like, he doesn't need to be caught up in Bloodline stuff or Bloodline B team stuff again. He's done that. It was a help at the start, and then it was a hindrance. A Jacob feud with Cody could be money. I think his energy and his realness would work brilliantly opposite Cody. I think it would give Cody a much needed fire in his belly, working with like a young up and comer hungry talent. I think Jacob is an excellent option. In fact, Jacob might even be a better option than Kevin Owens. The most interesting option is anyone who's never had the belt, and I don't have faith in them doing something exciting. That's David Ayers. Yep. It's hard to have faith in them to pull the trigger on something fresh, but like, it really feels like now more than ever they do need that something fresh. And next champ, Taker's wife, you're welcome. She might be the next AAA champ. But yeah, such an interesting question, Mark, because it really got me thinking. Like, Nick came in there with like two brilliant options with Breaker and Zayn, but I feel like, you know, they're in a different universe. And this is part of why I think having 2 world titles is a nightmare, because really, like, Cody's title, even though it's supposedly their top title and Cody's their top guy, is in a space now where nothing really feels right about it. They need to start go all in on Jacob and Breaker. The average age of their champions is 39. Yeah, wait till we get to 2 weeks' time when they do their War Games. We'll see what the average age of that War Games is, even with Breaker in there. It's still going to be a super high average age, and that is worrying. They've never had a champion born after 1987. World champion born after 1987. I was born in 1987. And I'm old as shit, man. Look, a lot of these older guys are still interesting and can still go. Cody's older than that. He can still go. Punk can go to a degree, but he can certainly tell interesting stories. Despite the fact seeing him lambasted with Logan Paul again is just horrific. But yeah, they do need to inject a lethal dose of youth into the main event scene. Jared B says, you'd like to think once they get closer to the Rumble, a few people will heat up, very few viable options. He'll feud with Jericho more than likely when he returns. Yes, like, chances are Cody will feud with Jericho in the early part of next year. And like, who wants to see that in 2025 as your top program? Like, yeah, that could be cool mid-card thing, but you don't want to see that as your top program. Said it on here before, but the fact they haven't had a men's world champion born after 1990 is actually insane. Fact. Even the development brand has 2 champs who are mid-30s. Yes. Yeah, I think we mentioned that last week. I can't remember. Ricky Starks is like, what, 36? Ethan Page is 38. That's their development brand. everything's so slow to get people into positions that by the time they get there, they're physically past their peak. Feels like you have to be 35 plus to be a world champion, so give it another 8 years and Braun will be ready. Yeah. Like, whichever company in the next few years, and I'm talking anywhere in the world, finds a guy who's like 27, 28 on the indies, who's totally awesome, and they just said, you know what, we're going to keep him off TV, let him develop until when we bring him in, we're going to give him a push and make him a champion within 6 years. Or within 6 months, whichever company does that is going to steal a beat on the rest of them. WWE fans are now seeing why Cody got booed out of AEW and Punk sold himself as a corporate stooge with the way he dressed Saudi Arabia. That's Colin. Yeah, I do think Cody can save the WWE stuff. I don't think it's at the stage yet where it was in AEW, so there is time for him to turn things around, but he needs help. Like, they can't put him in programs with uninteresting characters on a show that's tanking dramatically in terms of interest. But there certainly is, I think, the beginnings of what was there in AEW. But yeah, Mark, thanks for that question, because that really had my brain racked earlier. Oshin Mack then says the ease with which Mox has gone from cold-hearted killer to traumatized quitter is phenomenal. Osh, his performance in the last week, both on Dynamite and Collision, was utterly sensational. And I'm at a point again where I'm like, is this guy the wrestler of the year? Because there's nobody in all of wrestling doing character work like this. It's so layered. It's so interesting. It's just like we're looking at the dying days of a dictator. He's brought us on like this immense journey of authoritarianism and dictatorship, and what happens when that begins to crumble. We're at that phase. Was he on I say John Moxley's performance was cinema. I'm going to do I should make that the thumbnail. Like his performance on Collision and on commentary was just like incredible. The gaslighting, and like it's just so good. The level of gaslighting. And also I think there was a part of that where it was like he was afraid to be alone around the Death Riders. So he stayed with the commentary team as almost a barrier to protect them, because he's starting to think now that they're side-eyeing them. There's no confirmation on that, but I do think that's going to be something that becomes apparent in the coming weeks. Ronan said this is the best Mox Ambrose we've ever got. And think of what that entails, Ronan. His COVID run, he was the best wrestler in the world throughout COVID. There's no doubt in my mind about that. From 2020 to 2022, from maybe even 2019 to 2022, he was the best wrestler in the world. And this version is better. And I agree with you. This version is the best version of Mox Ambrose we've ever got. And think of what that entails. This is a guy who's multiple time had years where you could easily say he was the best wrestler in the world. Is this camera gone blurry again? Can't tell. Camera blurry? All Elite Romance. That looks better. I don't know why it does that. Despite the fact they want to kill each other and clamoring for Mox and Brian on the same commentary team, it'd be sensational, because like Mox was so good in like character work. I just thought what I loved about the War Games or the Blood and Guts fallout for the Death Riders was the fallout that they presented us with wasn't physical. The fallout was this like purely emotional thing where, yeah, they're a bit physically banged up, but they're all losing their minds over the emotional fallout of how they've lost, the psychological fallout of that. I just think it's genius because it would have been so easy to just have everyone physically banged up and not really sell the emotion of it. But Daniel Garcia can't keep his emotions in check. Mox is gaslighting the shit out of us. Pac just doesn't know what to do. He's getting more vocal. Brilliant. David Mean, yop the meaners, yop the morons. Colin Elligan says, in all seriousness, could Taker replace Triple H? No, I don't think. Think of TKO on it's how corporate it is. I don't think they would see Taker fitting in that way in that corporate role. It's a super corporate role. It's a corporate figurehead is what they want. And I love this from Ronan there as well on the Insta earlier. AEW is an adult product price for families. WWE is a family product price for adults. I don't have anything to add to that. It's just incredibly true. Like, look at that AEW show last week on Dynamite, the Blood and Guts show. That is the most adult wrestling show perhaps ever televised, start to finish. It's certainly on national TV, mainstream. And there's a family of 4 could have gone to that for $160. Would one person get into the WWE show? Like, to go to the WWE show, you need to be making either save up your money or making a decent bit of coin, you know? And, like, let's say I wanted to go to the WWE show somewhere. It would cost me, whatever, $200-300. And then you get this, like, what's presented as almost a kids, like, family-friendly kids teenage product, and I'm just like, why the people who are online loving this shit the most are the people who can least afford to go. It's bizarre, but yeah, Ronan, not much to add. Totally agree. I'm going to start with the PWI women's top 250. Not even the top 250, just kind of a brief chat about this because I think it leads in perfectly into what we saw with the women's Blood and Guts. David Ayres says none of the old school wrestlers feel like they could replace Triple H. Might be someone left field like Jeremy Borash if he's still there. Borash is still there. I think they have him. I think he's working across multiple brands, to be honest. Aaron Reynolds said pay £250 for a shite SmackDown in Dublin. Yeah, $250. That's just standard now, like, isn't it? So yeah, I think the women's top 250 is a really good jumping off point to get us to the Blood and Guts, because it's women's wrestling in 2025 has just been incredible from multiple perspectives. I don't think we've ever had, essentially in the history of wrestling, women's wrestling so strong across the board. You could look at all Japan women's and some of those promotions in the 80s and 90s and say it had a higher peak there, but that's one region, a couple of companies doing great work. This is really a women's wrestling revolution. If you look at the top 10, right, you have Mercedes Moné number 1, and we'll get into the debate of number 1s, 2s, 3s, and so on in a moment. But you have Mercedes number 1, Toni Storm number 2, Saya Kamitani number 3, Tiffany Stratton number 4, Stephanie number 5, Io Sky number 6, Athena number 7, Sari number 8, Naomi number 9, lol, and Rhea Ripley number 10, lol. She should be higher. And I know this isn't, like, it's partly a kayfabe list as well. And Ronan says instead of 1A and Storm being 1 and 2, there should be 1A and 1B. Yeah, I was thinking about that myself, and I kind of talked myself out of it. And here's why: Toni Storm, Mercedes Moné, Toni Storm, and Saya Kamitani have had 3 of the best years anybody's ever had in women's wrestling at the exact same time. It's incredible that these 3 have had the years they've had in the same year. Saya Kamitani on any other year walks this. Toni Storm on any other year walks this. Mercedes Moné on any other year walks this. And you could probably add Io Sky to that list as well. I thought Io was too low. Io should have been number 4. Reason being for Io being number 4 is I don't think there's a single year in the history of WWE where a women's wrestler, in my mind, has been so comfortably the best in-ring performer in the company. There's been times where when Becky Lynch caught fire and had that amazing couple of years where she was the best all-around performer in the company, but she wasn't the best in-ring performer. You could say that when Sasha and Charlotte had that feud around 2017, I think, that they were in the kind of upper echelon of in-ring performers in the company, but I don't think you could clearly say that either one of them were the best performer in the company in-ring. But I do think this year, look at the year, like it's just very clear to me that Io Sky this year is the best in-ring performer in WWE. So you have 4 people there. You have Moné, Storm, Io Sky, and Saya Kamitani, who are doing things that essentially have never really been done before. And Colin adds there that New Japan female talent is now featured in Wrestle Kingdom, where a few years ago during a dark match are not mentioned at all. They only added the women when Bushiroad, the owner of Stardom, bought New Japan anyway, and essentially they were given like 7 minutes at the start of the show, and sometimes it might be a 6-woman tag. And then Oshin says the women have clearly never been as strong in terms of drawing. Absolutely, and in some cases outperforming the men than they have this year. Yet that's never been clearer. Ronan says the problem for Io was WWE never treated her as the star of the division. Correct. And it's hard to do that with Rhea Ripley there. Also, you could probably add Rhea Ripley to that and talk about, like, in terms of impact outside the wrestling industry. That's like super rare as well to the level she's getting. Io was awesome, but WWE is terrible at booking. She won the world title and barely appeared on TV for weeks. Whole division is horribly booked. That didn't help Io either. You think of like Io, and there was a clamoring for Io. People wanted her, and they still didn't fucking put her on TV. We should be talking about her in terms of 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D with the rest of them. Let's talk about for a minute Saya Kamitani. So she has become the biggest draw in women's wrestling in Japan in essentially well over 20 years. It appears now that there can be no real argument that she's a bigger draw than Io Shirai was when she was there. Io Sky, who was a big draw, fairly big draw. Kana, Miko Satomura, like this. Saya Kamitani is looking like she's the biggest draw since the likes of Manami Toyota, Aja Kong, Bull Nakano, and that generation. So what we've got is a once in a generation draw in Saya Kamitani, who is lifting a company to heights that the company's never been at before. That in and of itself is a once in a lifetime year. You've got Toni Storm, who is doing the best character work of potentially, maybe now outside of Mox, but potentially anyone in wrestling in the world at the moment, who's got a character over to an unbelievable degree, who's getting mainstream attention for said character, who's also elevated the title she's had to unfathomable heights if you go back a few years. There's no way we could have thought this women's title would be as hot as it is in 2025 back a few years ago when it was Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida and Rio, and before, you know what I mean, Thunder Rosa and them, and like nothing wrong with what they did, but what Toni Storm did for this title, and Mariah May as well, is just, again, almost once in a generation type of stuff. However, what Mercedes Moné has done in the last 12 months has never been done before. It's like, and that's why I think she needs to be number 1. Whether you like her or not, I don't care. Whether you think she's good or not, I don't care. What we're seeing is something that's just never been done before. Something that's so like singular and unique that it has to be number 1. Like, other people have kind of done to varying degrees what Toni Storm has done. It's not that different from what Becky did a few years ago. other people have drawn like Saya Kamatani, just not in a long time. There's nobody doing what Mercedes has done. Who singularly elevating women's wrestling across the fucking planet in multiple promotions, doubling and tripling ticket sales for companies, putting spotlights everywhere. It's just so singular and unique that I think that's why it should be number one, if that makes sense, Ronan. And it's crazy because there's so many people doing like all-time work at the same time. And who was it earlier mentioned? Was it Ush mentioned about women's wrestling never been as strong in terms of drawing? It's because we have multiple generational talents working at the same time. Dave Ayres says, I think they are treating EO better now, but it feels like it's so she can be fed to Rhea at Mania. Yeah, look, I don't mind if... here's the thing, right? At the women's show pay-per-view back a few months ago, that they tried to use to counter-program All In, and it fucking was a bit of a disaster in that terms, despite the fact it was a really good show. But the perception of it was negative because Triple H is an idiot. Rhea and Io were on track to have the best WWE match of the year until they did that nonsense with Naomi at the end. And like, that's one of the best matches I've ever seen that's been totally ruined by moment. Like that, they had their working boots on. And they could go to WrestleMania, do Io versus Rhea in a singles match with no outside interference, give them the requisite amount of time, 15 to 20 minutes, let them put on, because they will put on a classic, and have a definitive finish. And even if it's Rhea going over, if the match is great, we won't care. And it won't hurt Io. Io, not Io. So yeah, I know what you mean, David, but at the same time, I genuinely don't think it matters if they get given the correct time and stage to do the match properly and to basically complete the match that they were doing at the Evolution pay-per-view before the nonsense with stupid briefcase things. We're going to be consistent. I kept saying about AEW not needing to get rid of this briefcase nonsense, and WWE is the same, and that briefcase nonsense hurt what was trending to be the company's best match of the year because they needed a moment. When the moment itself was you were getting a generational women's match, possibly the best women's match in company history, or at the very least since 2015 in Brooklyn. Jer says Tiffany is overrated. To be honest, EO by far the best in WWE. I agree with that. Tiffany is overrated. But the thing about Tiffany is, like, if you compare Tiffany to EO, there is absolutely no comparison in terms of the experience levels. Io Sky is like 15 odd years into her career and working at a super high level. If you look at Tokyo Sports Female Wrestlers of the Year, she won it 2 or 3 times before leaving Japan to go to WWE, more times than Asuka. So she was considered the best female wrestler in Japan in like 2014, 15, 16. That's 10 fucking years ago. Incredible amount of high-end working main event style wrestling for a long period of time. And just that level of experience she's got. Tiffany can't, like, there's no way you could fast track that level of experience, despite the fact that Tiffany has a lot going for her and she's very athletic and she has, I think, some ability there. She could be really good, but how do you get the experience that Io Sky has gotten in modern day when you're working once or twice a week? Very, very hard. And it's going to make it harder for the likes of Tiffany Stratton and other of the younger talents that are coming out of NXT to ever get to Io Sky's level. Roland says it's only a year ago the women were only getting 1 10-minute match per show. Yeah, sometimes it wasn't even 10 minutes, Roland, if we're being totally truthful with ourselves. Colin Nelligan says, it's so frustrating that WWE roster are so talented yet not allowed to show what brought them to the dance. And I think the most frustrating thing about that is as fans of wrestling, so many of us were waiting for the post Vince McMahon era because we thought that the next person would put more emphasis on the wrestling part and would push the types of stars that we identify most with. And the fact that that hasn't really happened is, I think, where a lot of that frustration comes from. Because when we saw Triple H booking NXT, he was pushing the type of stars we identified with. And now it just seems to be continuing Vince's legacy, and it's really frustrating. Super frustrating. So yeah, I think that kind of segues us nicely into the women's Blood and Guts match at AEW Blood and Guts Dynamite last Wednesday night. Meltzer gave this 4.5 stars, and he gave the men's one 5 stars. That guy needs his head wobbled, because this was, if you're giving a fiver to either of them, which neither of them were 5-star matches, let's be perfectly honest, they were both fantastic matches. Neither of them were fivers. But if you were going to give it to one of them, this was the one to do it to. This was groundbreaking. It was sensational. It was edgy. It was ballsy. It was full of super inventive spots and moments. Mercedes giving her title belts out to everyone to start throwing down some beatings was just incredible. The mirror spot with Tony Storm, oh my god. The spot where Megan Bain just chucked a steel chair at Jamie Hayter's head, that was just bonkers. Like, Sky Blue's gusher. Sky Blue pulled off one of the best blade jobs of all time. She is a real one. We've seen it before with her. She's not afraid to get fucking grimy. And she did it 5 minutes or 7 minutes into the match. And she did it right. Marina Shafir stamping barefoot into the glass so she could kick people in the face. Like, this match was just chock full of story, character, heat, hatred, rivalries. I was just mesmerized start to finish. I'm like, this is what... And I was on here complaining about the build to this show last week. And I think I did say that, you know what, this AEW, they'll probably pull it off. They'll probably pull it off. Chris Gallagher, if you think AEW is crappy shit wrestling, you're in the wrong place, pal. You're in the wrong place. This is All Elite Morro. It's on the hat and the screen. Yeah, Roland says Marina stamping in the glass was so original. There's so much thought went into this match. And honestly, one of my favourite moments, you didn't watch AEW Blood and Guts, it's crap. Interesting that you have an opinion on something you didn't watch, Chris. Always interesting. Says a lot about someone who has opinions on things they don't consume. And that's not just about wrestling. Jerbanan says Tiffany has upside, but again, sad about being on SmackDown. The feuds are so below par. She has tremendous upside, Jer, but needs to be put in the right spots with the right programs, and it's going to be hard for her to get that. Oshi Max says, this is one of those rare occasions where a wrestling match is just tremendous amount of fun to watch. It was so much fun. It was just like the Harley Cameron spot. When I saw that fucking puppet come out, I was like, not this nonsense. Why is there a puppet in the Blood and Guts match? Like, what are we doing here? And then Mercedes pulls off the puppet, and again, just such an original spot. Harley Cameron is there with the brass knucks hidden underneath the puppet. I'm like, yes. The puppet goes, it's there for 2 seconds, but it's done to reveal the brass knucks. Like, I popped out of my seat. I just thought this was a tremendous match. Better than the men's one, in my opinion. And I thought the men's one was great too. But as Oshin said, like, there was just so many moments of, like, originality and fun. And also, like, by the end of it, everyone's just covered in blood. And the finish, on paper, let's say if I was on the booking committee or agenting matches and that was the proposed finish, I would have lost my mind saying, no, that's shit. But how well they made it work I've never seen that type of finish executed so well. Where the torture and maybe because it's Tony Storm's just acting or whatever, I don't know, but the pain on Tony's face, even the fight she showed afterwards, Marina Shafir relishing the punishment, Megan Bain whipping Mina Shirakawa's back with a strap as extra torture. That's exactly how I feel, Aaron, as well. I'm going to get to that in a minute. The men's had a better finish. Yeah, but I still thought this finish was tremendous. And it was the best done version of this finish that I can remember off the top of my head. Despite the fact if you told me that on paper in advance, I said, oh, that sounds shit. But I thought they just captured it perfectly. I just want to say, look, the FTR angle, again, was great on this show. The Hangman and Will Hobbs match. The Hangman and Will Hobbs match. This was the most Jim Crockett Promotions TV show ever. And I'm including every one of Jim Crockett Promotions TV shows in that as well. This was more JCP than JCP. I don't think there's been an episode of wrestling TV in the history of wrestling that was as consistently violent and gritty and grimy as this. And I think this has to say to Tony that this is what your company is, and this is what you can deliver. You don't need blood and guts every week. You don't need gushers every week. But there was a tone on this show that was, this is wrestling for adults. This is old school territory wrestling that is defined by the characteristics of heat and hatred, and sometimes heels will get their comeuppance and sometimes they won't. They set the perfect tone for this, and you don't need blood all the time to recreate that tone. It's not necessary to have blood all the time, but when you're paying off big major feuds where they've been kicking the shit out of each other with what feels like legit hatred for months, then give us the blood. But it didn't need it here. Or, I mean, it did need it here, but it doesn't need it every week, and you can still capture that tone without having it. And this is... AEW needs to dispense with the goofy shit from time to time. This was the best version of the conglomeration we've got in all the months and months they've been on TV, because they're not doing goofy shit. They were out here locked in a cage with a group of killers, and we saw Kyle O'Reilly, the killer, come out. We saw Mark Briscoe, the killer. We saw Orange Cassidy lock in at his best. We saw Roddy Strong, the killer, a guy that we haven't really been seeing a whole lot of. Brian Dunn says the Hobbs tailbone bump. Jesus is right. That might have been the worst bump on this whole show, and it wasn't in any of the blood or guts matches. Like, legit, in terms of how sore it must have been in real life, I think that might have been the worst bump on the show. The Hangman vs. Hobbs match just left me crying to the heavens why they can't incorporate Hobbs into the main event scene on a consistent basis, because anytime he gets a chance, he delivers. Yes. Hobbs was incredible in this match. If you come out of that match thinking that Hobbs couldn't be the top heel for a company, you're out of your mind. You're out of your... Like, he was incredible. And he's just such a perfect opponent for babyface Hangman. And don't, like, this is what... Hangman just works so snug and stiff, and so does Hobbs. And they have great chemistry, and Hobbs has great chemistry with Moxley as well, actually. He has great chemistry with the stiff workers. Hobbs versus Claudio, love to see that on a pay-per-view. But yeah, the finish, this match was all about the finish. The second Blood and Guts, the men's one. 54 minutes or 50 whatever minutes is a long time. And for the first kind of 20, 25 minutes or so, I was like, okay, this is good. This is good. But then the last 15 minutes, and particularly that closing stretch with Kyle and Mox, was just legitimately top tier great. Top tier great. It was just like storytelling, execution, perfection. And I was making categories last week for Shane wants me to call the end of year All Elite Morro Awards the Morries. We don't know what we're going to call it. But one of the categories I made was best TV show, a singular episode of any wrestling TV show. And I really only had like one or two. This was before Dynamite on Wednesday. I think I was doing it Tuesday or Wednesday morning. And the only thing that I really had that felt totally unique and special to me was the Dynamite from Arena, Mexico. So I had that down. I was like, oh, sure, that's definitely the winner. But this Blood and Guts show was TV perfection. Like literally wrestling TV perfection. It's one of the best wrestling TV episodes I've ever seen. Maybe with the exception of the Brody Lee tribute show. In terms of just a wrestling show from start to finish. Like there's a load of Raws from back in the day and a lot of SmackDowns from back in the day that had a great 1 hour or like a great 30 minutes. But I don't know if anything in the history of Western TV wrestling was as good as this start to finish. Brian Dunn loves the Morries. I don't know if we call it the Morries. I have some cool categories, actually. I'll read them out. Brian wasn't a huge Kyle O'Reilly fan before this, but was a major star-making performance, yeah. And Aaron Reynolds says, Kyle with a casual reminder he's fucking unreal. Like, when was the last time we saw Kyle O'Reilly look this good? And he's great. Jerban says, you mean to tell me the Netflix debut wasn't the best? Oh, holy God. Remember, I don't know if you were watching that time, Jordan. Me and Shane, we watched the Netflix debut and then we reviewed it the next day for the podcast. And, like, we were so disheartened. It was like 2 hour or an hour and a half review of pure misery. The first Winter is Coming is still top for me. The first one, is that the Omega turning Goma Don Callis winning the world title? I think that was the first one, wasn't it? Against Mox. And then leaving out through into the limo with Don Callis. Is that one, David? If it is, that's a banger as well. That was a banger of a show. I remember being like Dynamite this week with Blood and Guts was one of those like super energizing for the fan base shows. Like if you like AEW and that's your jam, this is probably the type of show you want them to be doing more often if you're interested in the first place. So this was the one that like energizes the fan base. The Sting debut was so perfect as well. The Sting debut was so perfect. The first Dynamite Grand Slam, like opening with Omega Danielson and the crowd. There was 20,000 at that, like, and the crowd and the visual of that arena and opening with Omega Danielson going to a 30-minute draw. That was special as well. That was super special. I think the first Winter is Coming was fantastic, but there was no fans. There was the small amount. But that Grand Slam, fans weren't long back. And you got Omega and Danielson opened the show. That was special. Jared Bannon says, oh, it was indeed. It seemed like that was a turning point for Shane with WWE. It was, yeah. I think the Netflix debut was the turning point. Or it was certainly the start of the turning point. But WrestleMania was definitely what felt like the final straw. Because when me and Shane were texting during WrestleMania and we're like, how are we going to review this? Giving us 2 nights and so on and so on. And then by the end of it, Shane was like, I don't even fucking care. Fuck this company. I was like, yeah. Ronan D'Anna says it's just nuts that this was on cable TV. Yeah, I know. Like, it's crazy. But there seems to be allowed to. There's no blowback on women bleeding all over the place. Darby Allin getting thrown in fire. And we talked about Mox at start, like, generation. Mox was just so good in this. He's just, like, character work, in-ring. He's on another, like, tear at the moment. No point dilly-dallying on that. From Raw last week, we had the Dominic and John Cena match. which of course had to be opened by Paul Levesque, and he had to be in between the two of these. That drove me insane. Yeah, Brian says Shane was just so sad in the pod episode after Mania. Yeah, I know, because like I felt bad for him because actually no, fuck Shane. He didn't feel bad for me when AEW was doing crap TV shows last year, so I don't feel bad for him when WWE felt his shit this year. What's going to happen with WWE after Cena goes? Feels like they're after placing so much into him and not getting anyone over out of it. That's going to be a nightmare afterwards. But yeah, Triple H just all over this. I really, really enjoyed this match. This was just like a really fun TV main event where we got loads of satisfaction and everyone came away happy. And it doesn't hurt Dominic in the slightest. Ron Daniel says only Triple H putting Cena over could put himself over more. David Mean says when I see Triple H butting his way in on Raw, I laughed at the thought of you and Shane. Couldn't believe it. Oshin Mack messaged me almost instantly. I think that's when it was. Or he responded to a tweet, whatever it was. It's just about like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening type of thing. So I just want to start by saying I love this match. I thought this match was so much fun. It doesn't hurt Dominic. It allows Cena to complete whatever kind of Grand Slam thing they're calling it. He's never been Intercontinental Champion, which is hilarious. And sends the fans home happy. And I was like, yeah, brilliant. Really, just tremendously nice way to end a Raw. Brian Dunn says, yeah, no one knew has gotten over from the Cena retirement. Nobody. Shane Max says, I never wanted to smash a TV as hard as when the lights came on last week. Only to see the bald fraud. It's not me you're talking about, is it? Bald fraud. Yeah, crazy. And because you know the craziest thing about that is, Ush, they announced earlier in the day via tweet or whatever other social media that Cena would open the show. So they got the crowd to tune in at the start for Cena to open the show. Boom, Triple H. I was like, you cannot be serious. John McEnroe will be proud. You can't be serious. You can't be serious. Announcing Cena just for Triple H to be there. No problem with Cena win the IC, but the tournament is so lackluster. Yeah, Ger, do you know what part of that is? The tournament was a good idea, but they've done nothing interesting with it. And they haven't even... have they shown brackets yet? I just know there's like loads of guys in it, but I don't know who faces who if they win. Like, I can't... like, you can't sit down and like almost predict the bracket because they haven't shown the bracket. So like that's part of the fun of tournaments is looking at the brackets and being able to look at the pathways and say, oh, well, if LA Knight wins 2 matches and Gunter wins 2 matches, they'll be faced in the semi-final, so that can't be the final. And, oh, look, from this side of the bracket, oh, I think this guy's going to go through. But they haven't released brackets. I can't find any on social media. I don't know who's against who. Gunter and Jay will be the final, David Ayres thinks. I can't predict. I don't know if they're on the same side of the brackets. I do think Gunter's going to win it. Myself and Shane spoke about that on the upcoming podcast from this week, which is going out tonight after this show, where we talk about wins and losses mattering in wrestling, and we talked about the John Cena and this match in particular, so I don't want to go into super detail in this match because it's coming on the main pod. Brian Dunn says, no way they pull Gunter and Jay again, please God. They fucking might, you know, because this is the company. I don't think they'll do Jay and Gunter simply because Jay is in the War Games match. And so he doesn't need to get to the final of the tournament. And like, then you just be going with 2 guys in the final who have no connection or whatever to Cena. There needs to be 1 guy in the final with some sort of connection to Cena's history. Jarbanan says, I'd say they'll just do a multi-man match with the winners is all. Are you serious? Oh, that's even worse. So it's not brackets. It's not like we're not in the quarterfinals now. Oh my God, it's not even a real tournament. Ronan says it's almost as if they're making it up as they go along. I know. Why do I have any expectations whatsoever? But I thought the funniest part of all of this was Matt Hardy's tweet. And I want to break down and analyse Matt Hardy's tweet following John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio. Bear in mind, Matt Hardy debuted in wrestling sometime, I think, around 1995. And this is what Matt Hardy has to say about his review of John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio. For aspiring pro wrestlers, note that part. I'm going to come back to that. Watch the John Cena versus Dominic Mysterio match from Raw on Monday. The match represents the true essence of pro wrestling, creating and maximizing emotional investment from your audience. That is what matters in excelling in the art of pro wrestling, not star ratings or cage match reviews. Okay, I want to break down this tweet. For aspiring pro wrestlers, essentially what Matt Hardy is saying is, for aspiring pro wrestlers, be like John Cena and Dominic Mysterio. Do what they did. Leaving out the context that John Cena has had a quarter of a century of a GOAT career, 17-time world champion, WWE Grand Slam, won every title, considered one of the GOATs, one of the biggest draws in history of wrestling, one of the most beloved characters from many current viewers' teenage years. So just be like him. Be like John Cena. Have a quarter of a century career at the very top of the business and be one of the most beloved wrestlers of all time. Or, on the flip side, you don't have to do that. You could be Dominic Mysterio, the son of the legendary Rey Mysterio Jr., who got your start in wrestling as essentially a Nepo baby, but has worked really hard to his, in fairness to him. But would he have got these opportunities, or would he have been kept around so long without his father, Ray? Be like one of those guys. It's easy. Just be like one of them. Just be like one of them. And create and maximize emotional investment, because none of that emotional investment that was in that match, which there was, he's correct, there was emotional investment in that match, that was created by the legacy of both of these wrestlers. One, the son of the legendary Rey Mysterio, who's playing a generational heel, and one of the greatest legends of 21st century wrestling, a quarter of a century, more than a veteran, a legend, first ballot Hall of Famer. That's all part of creating it. This is such a nonsense tweet. An aspiring pro wrestler cannot do that. Matt Hardy does this all the time, and it drives me mad. You can't... If me and Shane got good at wrestling and put the exact same match on, it wouldn't fucking mean anything, because neither of us are a quarter of a year legend. Even bigger Ronan. Eddie is Dom's dad, not Ray. An even bigger legend. Literally one of the GOATs. Literally one of the GOATs. This match shows, Ronan says, this match shows why Dom is ahead of the others as the next big star. Totally agree. I thought Dominic was fantastic in this. Brian Dunn says, really just a not and tweet. He could have just said he liked the match. I know. Just say it was a great match. You know, it doesn't have to be this profound shy. He did this after his own match with, what you call him as well? The Dudleys, whatever they're called now. It annoyed me no end. And here's something else that annoyed me no end. LOLTNA. LOLTNA. Word on the street today is they're getting an AMC deal. AMC must be trying to break into kind of that live sports market, which is weird. It's something they've stayed away from for years and years. You know, this is the company that's brought us things like Walking Dead, which is funny that they would be doing a deal with TNA, because it feels like it's the modern Walking Dead. Let's think about this. This title change with Mike Santana is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life. I think Mike Santana is fantastic. I think he might be slightly overrated by the internet in recent months, but he is a guy that really is excellent. A really interesting character. seems super genuine, has a very good way of connecting. He's really learned audience connection on another level since going solo, and a guy who has totally believed in himself. And you want people who back themselves the way he has. He could have just taken a total mid-card role in AEW and got paid for a long time, but when someone bets on himself the way he has, you want to see them succeed. And I would love to see Mike Santana succeed. And you know, TNA did a good job doing the chase with him. I do think they got the title change wrong when they did it. It should have been at the previous show in front of 7,500 people, or 7,000 people in his home state, in his hometown. Ronan says Santana's on his way to NXT. He is. However, I think they still have him till like April. I think he's under contract till April. So he won't. I don't think he'll be going full time to NXT till April. Oshin says it's fair to finally give Kaz his moment, but after curating the chase Santana had and a month-long shutdown is complete buffoonery. Exactly. And do you think Jericho's definitely going to WWE after his comments about TNA's WrestleMania crowd at BFG? Yeah, I think he's definitely going to WWE. TNA can't afford Jericho, even if they get the TV deal. The TV deal they're going to get a maximum. They're not going to get TNA money off AMC, and TNA's, or they're not going to get NXT money, which is 25, 35 million. So the max they're going to get is 15 to 20 million. I think that'd be good. They might get 10, but I think they're not going to get more than 20. And Jericho, they're going to be paying Jericho's going to be getting paid 3 million to go somewhere. You can't get this new TV deal and use that chunk of it on Jericho instantly per year for 3 years. So I think he's going to WWE. If Santana won the title when he should have at Slammiversary, this wouldn't be as bad. Agreed, David. Agreed, because he would have had the run of TVs and Bound for Glory to have his title run, and then doing this when they did wouldn't have felt as kicking the teeth. So as Oshin pointed out, right, they did the big chase. They delayed the gratification of it because they wanted to get one more pay-per-view with Bound for Glory with Santana and the chase. I get that. Sometimes you do that. I think it was a bad decision, but they did it. And they still got a good crowd. It wasn't the crowd that they said they got, which makes Jericho's comments even funnier, because Jericho made them comments, and then the next day we got the real audience figures, which were 1,700 less than what they claimed. Every company does it, lying about their attendances, but it just creates because what happened, right? So they claimed 7,800 or whatever it was, so they could break their North American attendance record, right? And everyone's talking about Jericho's going on saying it's amazing, blah 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 blah. And then we get the real numbers, which was 5,400 paid, 6,100 in the building, including comps and so on, which is a fucking amazing number. 5,400 paid and 6,100 in the building, make no mistake, is a tremendous number. TNA were nowhere near that 12, 18 months, 24 months ago. Nowhere near it. But now, because they gave the bigger number and then we find out the lower number, it makes the lower number, which is the real number, seem shit. When it wasn't shit. But they should have just told us the real number, but they just wanted to break the record. What are they going to do to the next pay-per-view? Just make up a new number again? We're going to be able to see with our eyes when there's 3,000 people at the next pay-per-view that there isn't 8,000 people in there. I hate when these companies lie about the numbers. It drives me insane. Just say the real number. So what they do, right? They do this great chase with Mike Santana, and Mike Santana is by far the most popular guy in the company. There's no doubt about that. I know people love Joe Hendry and all that, but really Mike Santana is selling more tickets than Joe Hendry. And Mike Santana gets the title, and they shut down for a month, and their first show back, Mike Santana loses the title via cash-in with a terrible looking roll-up on a move from Santana that made no sense after the NXT C team do an invasion angle. Is there anything more TNA than that nonsense? And not only was Kazarian's cash-in, he won via cash-in, as David Ayres points out, Nick Nemeth can also cash in because they drew the cash-in match. We should have seen it coming when they did the draw in the cash-in match. This company just can't get out of its own way. All the goodwill they built up with Mike Santana's chase. And let's be honest, it's the NXT C team that's doing this shit. And they're trying, and then they tried to do this work shoot thing the next day. Will he, won't he show up? Oh my God, he does show up. Trying to leak to the dirt sheets that he's not showing up and he's not answering the phone. Which I thought was a bit something you shouldn't really be doing around the anniversary of Eddie's death, because that's exactly what happened with Eddie. He wasn't answering the phone. But anyway, that's probably delving or like looking too far into it. If Bound for Glory made him the second biggest company to follow up, put them behind MLW and GCW. They're definitely ahead of GCW, let's be honest. Let's be honest, they're running. It's not even a good moment for Kaz, really. Brian says, yeah, it's a kind of in a lot of ways a meaningless way for Kaz to win the title. It's just like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't even want to talk about it because I'm just going to moan. Like, this company was doing some interesting stuff, and they're just going to get ran over by this NXT team, it feels like. Or maybe they're sending the city. But, like, what if Mike Santana... See, like, Mike Santana is so clearly going to NXT next year that they'll allow him to run through their fucking C team anyway, because the end game is that TNA aren't going to benefit from Mike Santana beating the shit out of their C team as a TNA rep, because Mike Santana is going to end up in NXT by the time he's finished beating the shit out of the NXT C team. So it's essentially going to be an NXT wrestler saving the TNA roster in the invasion eventually. So it's all so meaningless, and I hope to get their TV deal, and I hope that what I really hope from the TV deal is that they can... It allows them a little bit more power in the WWE relationship. They're not as beholden to WWE. They have great exposure and more money themselves. So let's just hope for that. And I don't want to talk about this anymore because, like, what's the point? What's the point in wasting our air on TNA when they're just going to do something like that? Like, why couldn't we just have had 10, 12 weeks of Mike Santana being a badass babyface world champion? Why couldn't we just get that? LOL New Japan, because my God, the ticket sales for this show are just off the charts. Off the charts. This is legitimately now. They've sold well over 40,000 tickets at this stage. Ronan says Joe Hendry doesn't need to even turn up anymore. They can just pretend he's NXT until his contract runs out. He basically is NXT. I think his contract did run out last week, actually. I think he's legit signed with NXT now, Joe Hendry. Yeah, I think his contract was up sometime around now. But I think he's legit NXT now. Yeah, so this Okada-Tanahashi match. So before the Okada announcement, they had about 32,000 tickets sold. And then they do the angle with Okada. Honestly, this is looking like this could do 56,000. They're opening new sections, which tells us they're above 40,000 already. And maybe even more than that. We could get a legit sellout in the Tokyo Dome for the first time, I believe, in pro wrestling. I believe since Inoki's retirement in 1997 or 8. That is insane. There hasn't even been a sellout in any sport in the Tokyo Dome since Takaru, who's a huge kickboxing Muay Thai star over there, had a match there in 2022. It'll be the first sellout in the Dome. I think it's going to be a sellout. I'm not guaranteed, but it's looking like it. It's going to be the first sellout in the Dome in 4 years, and the first wrestling sellout in the Dome, I think, since 1997 or 98. Inoki's retirement. When was that? April 4th, 1998. Antonio Inoki versus Don Fry in Inoki's retirement match. That's the last legit sellout in the Tokyo Dome. And it's for Tanahashi's match. So that really tells you that Tanahashi is really in that rarefied stratosphere of wrestler in Japan with the likes of fucking Antonio Inoki. Like, this is incredible. And it puts Okada right into that category of truly all-time biggest draws in the history of Japanese pro wrestling. It puts both of these up there with the greatest draws in the history of wrestling. If we look at Wrestle Kingdoms, it'll be the most sold Wrestle Kingdom of all time. Look, there's a lot of Wrestle Kingdoms that announced really high numbers, but we don't. Wrestle King prior to like 2010, 2011, or maybe even a little bit later than that, were all work numbers. It's very hard to tell what the real numbers are. Like, there's only estimates before that. But yeah, this is going to be one of the most attended wrestling shows in the history of Japan. And I think that's just fucking amazing. I think that's amazing, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a real feather in the cap of Tanahashi for his career, and it's a huge feather in the cap of Okada as a draw. I know a lot of people wanted to see Nakamura in that spot, but I think what we've learned here is Okada was the right choice. Ronan says there's no doubt about Okada Tanahashi main eventing right now. No doubt. This has to go on. It's the main event. It has to. This is the biggest match in Japanese wrestling. In God, probably since that Inoki retirement. Which, like, think of the ground you're covering there. Like, you're covering all the Noah stuff of the mid-2000s. That Kobashi title run with the Jun Akiyama match in the Tokyo Dome that did like around 40,000. Talking about like some of the biggest legends ever who've not done anything near this. So, I don't know. This is just amazing. It's amazing. I don't have nothing else to say. And I hope that they put on the type of show that gets the company hot again. And I know it's weird saying this company isn't hot, but it's not. There's 3 things on this card selling tickets. One of them is the Iron Wolf debut, and the other is the 2 guys on the screen, Okada and Tanahashi. They're the only things on this card that are selling tickets, let's be perfectly honest. But those 3 things are selling mad tickets. Brian Dunn says Okada isn't the big match wrestler. He is the big match. It's just, what a feather in the cap for Okada. And obviously for Tanahashi. And what a way for Tanahashi to go. When Tanahashi became the president of the company a few years ago, and he gave that 10-point kind of plan that he wanted to achieve about getting young wrestlers over. And a lot of people saying he hasn't lived up to that plan. And fair, true. But one of the things on that is he said he wanted to legit put 40,000 people in the Tokyo Dome. And he's going to break 50. It's so great for him, but as a wrestler, for his legacy, his last ever match, his retirement match, is in the same stratosphere as Antonio Inoki's retirement match. Like, that just says it all. For those of you who don't know, I've started another project on Imagine an Evil match selling tickets. Ronald says the Evil match is selling tickets, not to see Evil. Well, maybe to see Evil get judo thrown left, right, and centre by Iron Wolf. I can't wait for that. I really hope Iron Wolf is fantastic. For those of you who don't know, I've started another venture on my own channel on YouTube called The Morroverse, non-wrestling related, doing things like GeoGuessr, cinema, history, and a few other stuff. It's very early days. There's 2 videos up at the moment, me playing GeoGuessr. If you want to come and subscribe to that, I would be eternally grateful. If you want to watch the videos, I would be even more eternally grateful, beyond eternity, actually, into the next life, and the next life, and the next life. So yeah, it's called The Morroverse. There's only a couple of things there yet, but there's loads of stuff coming in the future. If you want to, don't feel no pressure. If you just want to come here and talk about wrestling, fantastic. Shane wants me to pay for that plug. Fuck you, Shane. Now it's time for Shane's plug. Shane did a fantastic video on the Tori Al Wilson storyline over the weekend. I laughed my fucking head off left, right, and centre. I am in focus in those videos. I got a special camera. Am I gone out of focus here again now? Why does this camera keep going out of focus? Is it because I keep moving back and forth? So Shane did a fantastic video over the weekend on Al Wilson, Tori Wilson, all that clarity. We did a video on wins and losses in pro wrestling, me and Shane. A new pod that's out tonight. You want to check that out? I can't remember if it was good or not, but it felt good at the time. Shane coming up this week in his bizarre videos, I can't wait to see this one, is Mike Awesome versus Mike Awesome in WCW, which there's some fantastic stories in there. Looking forward to seeing how that's handled. And yeah, there's no Total Extreme Morro this week. Total Extreme Morro is on a short hiatus after the unbelievable success of Starrcade in WCW 1992. I'm currently working on building the mod for the modern day Irish wrestling landscape. The microphone is in focus. This I don't know. I need to get this camera is good, but I need to get an even better one. So yeah, currently Total Extreme Morro is on hiatus for a little while until I have that mod finished. I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks we'll release the first episode of that. That's going to be a super long form one that goes on for months and months and months. We're doing a local to global. We're building an Irish promotion up to be the biggest promotion in the wrestling world. And I have personally input well over 100 Irish talent, Irish companies, Irish venues, with pictures, with bios, everything. I've already got 100 gone in, and there's more going in. It's nearly ready. I'm hoping to start recording soon. Thanks, Ben. It does sound cool. I can't wait to just do the Irish scene, really, and just dig into the Irish scene. I put in over 100 wrestlers that are currently working in Ireland. The mod was last updated. The Irish part of the modern day mod was last updated, what feels like 4 or 5 years ago. So I've had to put a ton of work into that. So yeah, cannot wait for Total Extreme Morro, the new season, to come out soon. But until then, there's loads of stuff going on. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back same time next week. All Elite Morro, Monday nights. Brian, it's a crazy amount of work. That's why there's no Total Extreme Morro this week. It's a crazy amount of work. I spent, not this weekend, the previous weekend, I spent, no joke, about 26 hours working on the mod. And I spent like a couple of hours each evening working on it as well since then. So, but it's nearly there. Like, I'm hoping I can maybe record next weekend at the very latest, sometime next week. So it'll probably be the next week that it's out. But yeah, that's definitely something to look forward to, because it's modern day, it's Irish. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. Frankie Vendetta's in the game. I'm going to just job that jobber out to everybody. Thank you very much, everybody. Same time next week. All Elite Morro. Take care. Brush your hair.